Hi guys, welcome back to Saving Salvage, welcome back to the channel. Right, today we're back on the A3 TDI with the turbo replacement and hopefully some other stuff. Good news is I have my bolt slave turned up for the core of the turbo, and also the MITIVAC has turned up so we can test the actuator. So as always guys, if you do enjoy these videos, please do like and subscribe, and also follow me on wherever it is, Instagram as well, at saving_salvage. Right, let's just crack straight on with today, but back to the turbo. So it's a bit of a mess, yes, I know. Right, so I've got a pack of assorted bolts turn up. These ones in here fit absolutely perfectly in the core, perfect length, and they are perfect size to fit in there, so that's all good. And we have our MITIVAC that's turned up also. What I've just been doing off camera is I've just cleaned up a few of the parts of the turbo that have got carbon build up on, so I've cleaned up this nicely, look, and the outer side of that, and I've also stuck the veins in some like a degreaser. It's actually oven cleaner. It's a heavy duty degreaser, removes carbon deposits, etc. So I've just soaked the veins in there. I mean, they weren't sticking or anything like that, they were fine, but I thought while it's out, we'll give it a good clean, get rid of any build up of carbon so it keeps them nice and free for future reference. So what I'm going to do, that's been soaking for a while, so I'm just going to clean that up now, and then we can get on with rebuilding the new core. Right, it's going to be quite tricky to show this because I don't want to upset it, but basically I've got all the veins in position, and as you can see here, look, I don't know, probably a better way of doing this, but it's all seated, and if I find the actuator, which is here somewhere, look, you'll be able to see, there you go, all the veins open as they should, and that's like full boost, no boost. So that's all that in position. So now I've got to put the cover casing back on this, just to keep all the veins in place, and then we can start rebuilding. So I can show you a bit better now because I've got the casing back on, so it's all secure. But to do it, I had to, because it's quite tricky getting all them veins in the right position at the right time. So it was a case of get the veins on the like sort of a slip ring, as you call it, get it in position, get the rollers in, which I had to do one at a time, and then once they're in position, I had to then get the core and put it on top of it into position, and then I was managed to flip it back upside down, and now we're all in, as I just showed you, all working as they should. And now I've put the casing on the top, it's all now nicely bolted down. Right, so I'm just going to get out my little kit. FYI, for anyone who wants to know, I bought this off Amazon for 15 quid. It's like a brake bleed kit, but it's also, because it's a vacuum, be perfect for actuators as well. So, right, I've just worked a proper messed up way of doing it using the bits I have available. So I've used, because this is a brake bleed kit as well, I've had to use the wrong end of the brake bleeder, which fits over the actuator end perfectly. I've then had to use a sort of a T-piece adapter. Actually, I've got a straight piece adapter. Right, let me choose that. One sec. I'll swap these two over. Back in there. That fits in there. That fits over there. Okay, right. So I've used an adapter, the wrong end of a brake bleed nozzle, and then a straight bit of wire. So hopefully now this should work fine. So I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Right, okay, I think you can. So hopefully what this should do now is it should draw a vacuum, and it should hold the vacuum. That's the important thing. So as we're doing it, the rod is going in. So I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but the rod's going in as I'm doing the vacuum. So we'll just keep going all the way, far in as it wants to go. I'll just draw the vacuum out. Ah, there we go, perfect. it's holding vacuum. So if the actuator was perished, gone, that would lose its vacuum, so the gauge would go all the way around back to naught. So luckily in my case, it's holding vacuum, which means the actuator is working fine. Right guys, so that is the turbo all built back together. There is our old core and here is our new one all built back up. So it's fairly straightforward. Once the vanes were in position, it was fairly straightforward from then on. One thing I didn't show you, the new turbo does come with a few seals. You got a oil return gasket, and also you've got an inlet gasket here, in this side. So in there, when I bolted it back to the casing of the intake, there was just a rubber seal that goes around the outside. So a new one of those was fitted. You've got your seal. You can't really go too wrong because everything's got its position markers. So you've got a little gasket here with a tab out to show that it goes in there. And you've got, what else have you got? Where is it? There was a little indent. It might be under there. Well, basically there was a little indent here, which meant you couldn't fit this in the wrong position. So everything's in the right position, you can't get it wrong. And then it was obviously just the 5 bolts on each side to put it back on. And the actuator, let's just bring it over here. That's all bolted on, that's just part of the exhaust housing bolts. There's 2 bolts there, and then obviously we've just got a little clip that holds the rod on. We won't have to set the actuator up on this one because we haven't replaced it. So the adjustment, as obviously you can see here, that's the adjustment for the actuator. You can see where from the factory they've put on some sealant just so it doesn't move. Because obviously we haven't changed the actuator, we don't have to set it up because it's still in the same position as it was before. But if you were to replace the actuator, you would have to set the actuator up using VACCOM, really, because it's done on a voltage. So when you vacuum the actuator all the way up, it will show a minimum and a maximum voltage. I can't remember what they were because it's been many years since I used to set them up, but you have to do it on VACCOM to make sure they don't go outside the parameters, because if they do, that is when you would go into limp mode. But as I was saying, that's all good, won't have to touch that. So that is the turbo back together from here. So we're going to now put it back in the car. We've got our new gaskets as well. We've got a new gasket there and exhaust gasket as well, and then it'll be putting it back together. Yeah, so this will make you laugh. So I was just clearing up the tools, ironically, and look what I did. See this nice DPF sensor here, look? See how it goes to nowhere? Yeah. Decided it'd be a good idea to basically, I trod on the cable with one foot, and as I went to walk with the other one, kicked it and pulled it straight off the other end, the sensor end. So that is absolutely knackered. So yeah, I can't repair that. So I've managed to find one on eBay. So that's annoying, so I've had to order one of them. I found a second-hand one with 30 days warranty. It was 20 quid, so it's not the end of the world, but it's a pain in the arse. Won't stop us from refitting the DPF today though, so I can just screw that back. I managed to get it out. I'll just screw the new one in. Should be fairly simple once it's in position. Right, just to give you a quick update, we've got the turbo back in position. It was weirdly, it was a lot easier to get back in than it was to get out. She went in quite nicely. We've got the oil return feed pipe, that is in. We've got the intake pipe, that's slotted back in as well. EGR cooler's back into position. What else have we got? Manifolds all bolted up. I think that's about it from the bottom. We've got our new gasket for our oil feed pipe. I just said actually, that's all in position. I think that's pretty much it from the bottom at the minute. So we're going to keep building the bottom up for now. We're going to put the DPF back in, gonna get that bolted on, and then hopefully we could bring it down and give it a start. Okay, so upon close inspection, my DPF sensor doesn't appear to be in good shape. I didn't realise, but it had ruined all the threads on the pressure sensor, and I'm not sure how the threads are in there. I have run a tap through it, if it's gonna focus. It seems to be mainly just the pressure sensor that's had the threads ruined on it. I have run a tap through there, and it does seem okay, but the only issue is I don't want to, because it's in a quite awkward position, so once it's fitted it's going to be quite hard to get access to if I do need to re-tap it. So I'm not going to fit the DPF today, just because I know what will happen. I'll fit it, it will need re-tapping or something. So I'm going to wait until I've ordered a new sensor that will be here Monday, and I just want to fit it so I know it fits all perfectly, no issues. As I said, it looks okay, the tap went through it okay, but I just don't want to regret putting the DPF in, so I'm going to wait until a new one comes to do that, which is a tad annoying, but there we go. So what we're going to do instead is I've got the new coil spring and I've got the drive shaft, so we're going to start doing those first, because in fact I'll do the coil spring first, I reckon. Right, again, sorry for the wind and rain noise on the roof. Dennis is playing havoc, making a lot of noise. So onto the shock spring. We've got, actually part of the spring fell out a minute ago, it's down there, look. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the shock out. So to take the shock out, we're going to remove the drop link, which is a bolt here. We're going to move the bolt which holds the shock to the hub, which is here. There's 3 bolts on the top, up here. You have to remove the scuttle, well, just lift up the scuttle panel to remove those 3 bolts. And then hopefully what I've actually got a VAG specialist tool, which is a spreader. Bear with me, I will go get it and show you. Here it is. So this is called a spreader. So basically it's an oval shaped head, and the idea behind it is there's a hole at the back of the, I'll show you when the shock's off, but there's a hole at the back of the hub, and what you do is you put this in it like that, in the back of it, and then you twist it, which spreads the hub, it forces it apart, and that then the idea is that it gives you a bit of free play to get to slide to be able to slide the shock out the top. Right, so we've got our shock and spring out. It came out quite nicely actually using that spreader tool. Literally the hub fell off the bottom of the shock, literally straight away just fell out. And then it was just the drop link which come out nice and easily. And then it was just the 3 bolts on the top of the shock, and then the whole thing come out, and there she is on the floor. However, now I've got it out, looking at it, great, we need more parts. So it looks like the top mount is gone. So obviously the spring is broke at the top, and what's happened is it's broke up the top mount, and I don't know if you can see it, but I have a grand total, if you can see them there, look, I have 2 roller bearings left of my top mount, that's it, the rest have gone. So we're also going to need a new top mount, so more delays. So just following on quickly from that previous segment you just watched, I'm sure someone that's keen has noticed it is now actually a few days later, and I have gone out and bought a new top mount for this shock. So that consists of all new bolts, 3 for the top, the main nut for the spring, and this is our top mount. I didn't need that part necessarily, but it comes with it, so it just makes it easier. And this is our bearing top mount here in the packet. So that's the part that went. It's filled with roller bearings, and that just enables the shock to turn with the steering, allows it to flex. So there are our new parts for our top mount. Got the new spring in the box as well. So now we're going to swap over and build up this new shock. And just quickly, the spring clamps that I've got aren't great. They're these 2. They're not very good. I wouldn't recommend people actually buy and use these because they can be a bit dodgy. I recommend that you actually use, I'll put a picture up on the screen now of what I recommend you should use, but it's like an all-in-one where it compresses the whole spring as a one unit. These are just a little bit flimsy. I mean, you've seen horror stories, I've heard horror stories of springs coming off of these and hitting people in the face, etc. I use them because I'm an idiot, but I advise that you don't. Just for your information. So I completely lied. We actually have a few more bearings. I found a couple more. So we probably got about, I don't know, it's about 10 in total. So there's a broken up part that you can just see. So the bearing housing and the bearing wheel there, look. So that's the part we're replacing, that's the knackered part. And just to show you quickly, that is what it should look like. And it just allows, the top of the spring will go here and the top mount will be there. And it just turns and just allows movement of the steering basically, so it doesn't ping 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 when it goes around. It just it can move nice and smoothly. So that's our new top mount there. And now just going to check our coil spring as well to make sure that is the right one. I need to go find our part as well. Always check your new coil spring to make sure it is the right one. There is a lot of cases I've had in the past where the coil spring has been incorrect and not the right spring. So if you have the old bit, it helps because obviously it gives you a true indication of actually how big the spring is. So in this case, there you go, look, perfect example, it's the wrong epoxy spring. Right, so there we go, perfect example why you should always check the coil spring before you put it on. So this one, although I ordered a car with sport suspension, obviously because this is a sport, it is clearly not, because if you see here, if I just use that bit of spring, so the bottoms are nicely in line, but look at the top. It's a good, about 3 centimeters out. So I've just phoned up and asked, and the standard spring is just under 3 centimeters taller than the sport. So we've clearly got standard suspension. So what I'm going to do now is go back out. I didn't get this one from the place, I got that online, so I'm going to have to send that back online, which is a pain in the ass. But now I'm going to pop out to my local branch and get a standard spring. So let's try again. Right, so there we go, I've gone out and got another spring, and this time it is correct, same height at the bottom, and there's also a little bit that's come off at the top as well. So now it's correct spring, so we'll commence refitting. Right, that's the spring on now. As you can see, got to be correctly seated here. The spring butts up to the end there. Also, it doesn't really matter on the top because it will turn. You can put it in position on the strut. These can be quite tricky to do without a gun, purely because it's quite hard to get, unless you've got like a special socket. You can't get a spanner in there, so you can't put an Allen key in the top and spanner it round. So it is actually quite useful to use like an air gun or a battery gun to get these bolts on and off, because as I said, you can see, look, as you can see, it'd be quite tricky to get a spanner in there. But that is the spring all on, all in position, new top mount on, all good to go. So we'll stick it back on. Right, so that's the shock back in. I've just been thinking, because this new DPF sensor isn't going to turn up for a few days, I don't think, what I'm going to do is I won't put the drive shaft back in, I'm just going to put the wishbone back on, just with a couple of bolts, just so we can put the wheel back on, and then we can push this out. And what we're going to do is actually, it will be in the next video now, but the next video will be getting the RS3 back in, because I'm pretty certain I've got all the parts for that now, to get that back on the, well, when I say back on the road for pretty much the first time since I've had it. Right guys, that is it for today's video. Didn't really go to plan at all. Managed to cock up the DPF by kicking that sensor out. So I haven't been able, I'll fit the turbo, refit the turbo, but I haven't been able to put the DPF back in because I just want to make sure when that new sensor turns up in the next few days that the thread is okay. I'll put a tap through it, it seems okay, but I just want to double check because I don't want to fit it and then find out I need to take it all back out again to re-tap it. So we've done the spring, again, issues with that, top mount, wrong spring, etc. But that is now done and on. We're just going to put the wishbone back on, a couple of bolts, just so we can push the A3 outside, which means in the next video, guys, it's going to be the RS3. I'm pretty sure I've got all the parts for that now to get the front bumper all back on, and then that will be hopefully ready for its first road test, which is ironically about, let's have a look, what's the date today? 6 days before my first ever video on the RS3. So hopefully I can get it on the road just before the year mark. It's taken a long time, but we got there in the end. Well, we haven't got there. We will get there in the end. So as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. And if you do enjoy these videos, please do like and subscribe. And I shall see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.